Okay, hello. I wanted to welcome everybody. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the Satipatthana Sutta. And first of all, I'm going to give a review of what we've done in the past. But then I want to go ahead and compare it to Jungian psychology. And Jungian psychology is obviously more modern. Buddha wrote the Satipatthana Sutta, or he didn't write it, but he taught it about 2,500 years ago. But I want to highlight something. It's a review, but I want to highlight something to really keep in mind about the Satipatthana Sutta. In the sutta itself, it refers to a phrase, being free from desire and discontent. And I have another way of putting it that appeals to me a little bit better, but a sense of well-being, a sense of peace, tranquility, and well-being is really what this is about. And it is in spite of all the things that go on and challenges in the world. And ultimately, when things go wrong, our tendency is to react. And when we react, it doesn't serve us well. And our own reaction makes it worse. So one of the reasons we have problems is when things go wrong, we react, we don't make it better or can make it worse. On the other hand, certainly everyone in our class, most of the people in the world really want a healthy world, and there's nothing wrong with wanting it. Things do go wrong, but what we want is all our problems to go away. It'd be nice if there was justice. It would be nice if there's no war. It would be nice if there was no poverty. It would be nice if there was no health problems and everybody was healthy. It'd be nice if there was no aging. But the world is not like that. And so our concerns that trigger reactivity are legitimate. They just aren't helpful. That's the problem. And the thing is, if there are unwanted circumstances, what it really takes is a mental discipline to stop, count to 10, gather yourself, and make sure that how you respond is both healthy, skillful, and compassionate. And one of the things about the way we respond, and my initial meditation teacher, Ketsun Sambo, referred to the mistaken mind and felt that we behave inappropriately, we react ineffectively because our mind makes a mistake. Well, the mistake our mind makes isn't the fact that the world is not a perfect place to be in. We don't live in utopia. The mistake that we make, and what I see in myself, is when things go wrong, we have a narrative. Woe is me, this stinks, I wish it didn't happen, why did it happen to me? Narrative triggers emotions of anxiety or fear. So the mistaken mind builds a story around this that debilitates us, that stops us from thinking clearly and causes our reactivity. And unfortunately, the way our minds work, or the way my mind works, is when things go wrong, I often think, well, if they had done this, if I had done this, if she had done this, we find a scapegoat. And by the way, I'm saying this happens because I've been cultivating mindfulness for a long time. Otherwise, I just get lost in my anger, get lost in my thoughts, and it's natural. I'm justified when I'm angry about someone doing something wrong. But mindfulness makes me wake up and say there is anger, makes me realize I'm blaming someone, helps me see what I'm doing, and gives me a pause to, instead of doing something reactive, do something proactive. So what can help us maintain a sense of well-being, peace, and tranquility? Awareness. Aware of what's going on, and so aware that we can regulate our response. And in order for us to do this, we need to cultivate mental discipline. And the strength of the Buddhism, essentially, is providing a technique called meditation that disciplines our mind, wakes us up to our thoughts and emotion, and gives us room to make effective responses. Before I had studied, and I'll stop on here for just a second if you want to read it, but this summarized what I just said to you. It'll be in the handouts, and it'll also be in the recording. If you have trouble reading it when you get the handouts, be easier. And by the way, if anybody has comments of whether I should stop on these really tight foils, that's why I keep the picture up. Yeah, it's difficult to have someone talking and read at the same time. Yep. Okay. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about Jungian psychology and how it relates to what Buddhism is. And to sum up, what I want to get at is I had studied Jungian psychology before I got deeply in Buddhism. And Jungian psychology to me is fantastic in identifying what triggers these thoughts and emotions that cause reactivity. And it's been helpful me to understand that. And, it makes the practice to me more rational. And Jungian psychology, of course, came out of C.G. Jung. And here again, I'm going to leave this picture up and talk. And if you can, as I'm talking, listen mindfully. Know when your mind has wandered. Know when you're no longer listening. Can you pay attention? And I'm purposely writing the notes that are on the next page so that if you are interested and have time, you can read and see what you skipped. And I'm not insulted when your mind wanders. My mind wanders too. I wish I were 100% concentrated. But I'd like to go through Jungian psychology, not by presenting his principles, but talk about an example of what happens in all of our lives. What goes on in childhood, how it impacts adulthood, and use an example when we're adults. And I'm familiar with this example because I've lived on it. And I'm quoting actually someone I know very well, one of my parents, who said, "Do what I tell you to do, or I'll give you the back of my hand." At this stage in my life, after seeing some kind of difficult children, I understand why my father or my mother said that to me. But it's an authoritarian view, and it frightens a child. And a child will decide, will react to that, and different children will react in different ways. And the way they react builds a behavior pattern. There are some children who will think to themselves, "I want to be a good little boy. My parents will love me if I do everything they tell me. I'll please them. I'll do whatever they tell me." And parents give them a reward. They're pleasing everybody. If you go along to get along, as a philosophy of life, it's learned at the age of 2 or 1 or 3, and it goes on in a behavior pattern in the rest of your life. Other children, 1, 2, or 3, their parents doing it, tell them to do something. And the first thought goes through their head, I'm not letting anybody tell me what to do. And they throw a temper tantrum and they scream and yell and cry and cry and cry until the parents finally give up and do what they tell them to do. The parents listen to the children. And that child learns to be, fight or flight. They're fighting. They're not fleeing from it. They're not pleasers. Once you develop this pattern as a child, as an adult, you're likely to do the same thing. And for example, you may no longer be living with your father, but your boss becomes an authority figure. And when they tell you something to do, you've learned you go along to get along, you do whatever they tell you, you don't fight back, you do what you're told. And sometimes this is absolutely the right thing to do. You need to do that sometimes. But sometimes the boss may be telling you something that doesn't help you, doesn't help the company, and it would be good if you could speak up. And if you didn't follow that complex. Because the boss may need to know something. And to be honest, that was my complex. And I did go into analysis, and amazing thing happened. I realized that I had the complex of being a pleaser. When the boss would tell me to do something, if I thought it was reasonable, I'd say, yes, sir, go ahead and do it. If they said to do something that didn't make sense to me, I'd say, I may be mistaken, but I think we'll have this problem if you go ahead and do that. I'll do it if you really want to, but did you think about this? And they said, oh, no, I didn't. Stan, thanks for doing that. And my whole life, I've been afraid to speak up, and then realize, well, I can speak up to my boss. I can speak up to other people who tell me what to do if I do it diplomatically and clearly. But it wasn't until I was 50 years of age that I could do that, because I was caught in the complex. And essentially, thoughts and emotion. Boss talks, I do the thought in my head, do what I'm told or I'll be beaten up. And that wasn't true. There are the children who threw a temper tantrum. Boss tells them to do something, and they say, boss, stick it in your ear. I'm not going to do that. You don't know what you're talking about. You're stupid. The next thing he knows, he's no longer in the company. He goes to the next boss. Well, I left because that guy told me to do stupid things. He's just a stupid idiot. Goes to the new company, and he may do the same thing over and over again. And he spent a lifetime working with stupid bosses. And in his worldview, they're stupid bosses. And I don't know, I think I've met people both ways. But these complexes don't help you. They drive thoughts, they drive emotions. And in Jungian psychology, the solution to this is become conscious of them. Be aware of what your behavior patterns are. Is it really serving you? For me, it took talking to an analyst. And I think for a lot of people, you've done this your whole life. You've pleased people all your life. It's hard to change, but you can be conscious of it. The other thing, maybe without seeing an analyst, if I don't tell the boss, the consequence could be the program goes into the system we're working on and won't succeed. I need to speak up. And I need to speak up professionally and diplomatically. Another thing I want to point out is not all complexes are bad. To want to please people, sometimes it's the right thing to do. So the pleaser sometimes is doing the right thing. The person who confronts it, if a boss tells you to do something unethical, it's really important that you stand up and speak back, hopefully diplomatically. But sometimes anger motivates you to do something you need to do. Sometimes pleasing doesn't serve you well. So there's Buddhism isn't dogmatic, and Jungian psychology isn't dogmatic either. And whether the complex is serving you well or not serving you well in Jungian terms, they will say, what does it cause you to do? What does it stop you to do? And in Buddhism, you'd say its reactivity is what you don't want it to do. What it can cause you to do is think clearly, respond in an effective, efficient manner. So in Jungian psychology and in Buddhism, the whole thing is when you're triggered, be skillful, be compassionate, be wholesome and thoughtful in your response and diplomatic. By the way, I have another example of a complex being triggered. And if someone says, hey, stupid to you, I don't know how many people could have someone say, hey, stupid to you, and then have this reaction that you want to punch them in the nose or yell at them or whatever. Unfortunately, what I've noticed with me is sometimes when someone gives me advice about what I should do, I translate that into, hey, stupid, because I know what I'm doing. I'm driving in the right lane. I'm driving the right speed. I'm parking the right spot. I know what I'm doing. And I take it as if the person said, hey, stupid, and give an overreactive response that causes problems. So understanding complexes and how they work in Jungian psychology can be really helpful. And also, there are cases like someone saying, hey, stupid. I would think a large percentage of the time, if someone says, hey, stupid to you or treats you that way, it's probably a sign that that person has serious problems. And almost compassion would be a better response, could be a more effective response, because if they're saying it to you, they're saying to people they shouldn't say it to. This is even harder to read, but I'll leave it up for a while for those who.
Wow.
Okay. One of the things I've noticed, well, let me read the quote first. You will be free the moment you stop worrying about what other people think of you. Well, we have an ego, or we may not. I have an ego, you may not. And I have noticed cases where it has not served me well. The words came out of my mouth once, I think I'm slave to my ego. I don't like what it does to me. I think my biggest problem is my own ego. An example, conspicuous consumption. Most of the time, I don't like it, but every once in a while, there's something that'll trigger me. And I see it in other people more than I see it in myself, but I do have some of that, is you want people to think how great you are and you do things. Maybe I may not buy expensive clothes or sports cars to try, but maybe in other ways, I want people to notice me and think highly of me. And again, what does it cause you to do or what does it stop you to do? Maybe I want people to think good of me, so I'm helpful, help them with their problems, be kind to them. So that complex isn't really, that I want to be liked isn't a bad thing. But if it is that I waste money on things that people think I'm rich, then it maybe is not a good thing. And this I have seen in myself. People say, hey, can you help me with so-and-so? And I volunteer to do something. And I really got in a position where I thought I'm going to help someone for 2 hours a week. And they thought I'd signed a blank check for all the amount of time they wanted from me. And I'd get 20 hours of requests a week. And it was really hard for me to say, I'm stopping. And when I said I want to stop, they said, well, can wait, we'll get someone else. We'll get someone else. After a month, we're going to get someone else. And I had to get to the point where get someone else or it's not going to get done. And then they got someone else. Needing to be right. I have this problem. I can't, and it's something I've worked on, but before most people got here, we were talking a little bit about politics, and it can ruin relationships trying to say I'm right, you're right, and it's often not worth talking about. But it even gets to the point where I thought our first date was on a Wednesday. No, it was on a Thursday. No, it was Wednesday. No, it was Thursday. I mean, things that just don't matter, you get in arguments about, and don't matter. So the question in Jungian psychology is, you have a complex. There's inner wisdom with you. The inner wisdom in Jungian psychology is called the self. And who's going to be in charge? And here's where Buddhism comes in, and I think is very helpful. In Jungian psychology, what you can do is journal, see your responses, notice what you did wrong, keep noting that till you begin to realize you've done the wrong thing, or to realize what your patterns of behavior are and how you can change it. And it's helpful to talk to an analyst when you're doing that. But what I've seen, and has been very helpful to me, is Buddhism. And it complements Jungian psychology. In Jungian psychology, you understand why these complexes are formed. You understand why you behave the way you do. Buddhism, if you do a regular meditation practice, you have a better chance of regulating your reactivity. You catch the complex earlier and can stop it. In Jungian psychology, they refer to it as a complex, an energy charged fields that drives your behavior. Buddhism sees the problem as habitual tendencies, and essentially they're the same thing. Your behavior patterns are based on complexes. Consciousness, the goal of a Jungian analysis is that it brings your complexes to consciousness so you can be aware of them. But in Buddhism, it's awareness, and mindfulness gets you to you're aware of your complexes, what's driving you. The inner wisdom in Jungian psychology is the self, and individuation is the goal. When you're meditating, you cultivate an objective observer, which turns out to be your inner wisdom. You can see, oh, I keep doing this. I keep doing this. Let me do something about it. And individuation, I think, is very similar to awakening. You are no longer driven by your complexes, your habitual tendencies, and you're able to make thoughtful, skillful, compassionate, wholesome responses to situations. And the way that Buddhism does it is through the disciplined mind. More than those who hate you, more than all your enemies, an undisciplined mind does greater harm. More than your mother, more than your father, more than all your family, a well-disciplined mind does greater good. And this is a step-by-step, the Satipatthana Sutta is how do I get this mental discipline, mindfulness. What do I look at? If I'm going to meditate, what do I contemplate on? What do I put the focus of my attention? Well, you could put it on your body. And if you're always focused on your body, first of all, it stops the thinking mind. What does it feel like in my chest? What does it feel like in my arms? Felt sensations. And your body can talk to you. I earlier gave the example, someone asks you something to do. I couldn't say no. But the times I couldn't say no, I just feel this tightness in my chest. And now I can't think through it, but the tightness in my chest is talking to me, saying, let me think about it, I'll get back to you. And I've gotten better and better at saying no, or at least let me think about it and really think what I want to do. But the body, if you're aware of the tension in your body, it's a warning sign. It's a bell. It's telling you you might do reactivity, don't do it. Feelings is the second foundation, 4 foundations of mindfulness. If you can notice your feelings, today I walk every day. I tried to be mindful of the sounds today. And I noticed, I heard the birds and I could feel this feeling, oh, it's pleasant. I like that. I heard the background noise of the traffic. It was kind of neutral, but I noticed it was neutral. Then someone started the lawnmower, and my feeling was, it's noise, it's unpleasant. And as I was walking, focus was on the sounds, my emotional state would change on the sounds, or they could change on the sights. And usually what changes us is what we hear, what other people do. But if we can catch the fact that the sound of the tractor is unpleasant, you don't go down the road. And as a matter of fact, what I do now, when there's a large noise completely blocking everything else, I just imagine it's singing Om and that it's chanting to me. And I chant along with it, Om, and then it becomes a pleasing sound. So it's your perception and how you translate it that can change that. And if you realize your feeling's negative, you can do something about it. The mind. Actually, I think next week we'll go over what's going on in the mind, but the basic thoughts and emotions that go on are either aversion, hatred, and ill will, negative from unpleasant feelings, or desire, craving, and lust, wanting something, desire, or it's neutral, delusion, where you're walking around just feeling like everything's going great, nothing can go wrong, and you're deluded. Things will go wrong. And Dhammas, there's a set of 5 different topics under the Dhammas. One of them is the Four Noble Truths. But this is stepping back from all these and looking at the process. The Four Noble Truths is a step-by-step of how you can, the Eightfold Path, step-by-step what you can do to stop the desire and lust, stop the aversion and hatred, and stop delusion. So this is where we put our focus on and how to contemplate. We have to be diligent, really trying to keep our focus, clearly knowing when we've been triggered, knowing the thoughts, knowing the emotion, what's going on in the body, what's going on with feelings, what's going on with the mind. And let me clarify again. John Gillette asked a really good question a long time ago, and it's changed how I teach all of this. But the goal isn't when you're sitting down, if you're supposed to focus on your nostril, focus on your nostril, get the felt sense. That's what you're really doing. You're not going through, well, how do I feel in my body? How are my feelings? No, not that. But particularly when a thought gets triggered, you can be aware, well, what were my feelings? What was my mind doing? Was I diligent? And then get back. And you should be doing 90% of the time diligently trying to feel and experience things, and maybe 10% or less with thinking, oh, am I doing this right? Am I on the right focus? What's going on in my body? Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself. You're not concentrating. Mindful, it's the ability. Mindfulness is the ability to wake you up from what you're doing and become aware of it. And we're going to do a guided meditation afterwards, which is a training transfer to train this. And eventually, for everyone here, their mind will wander, a thought will rise up. And what is very interesting is mindfulness is that thing that got you to wake up, that notices you were thinking. And every time you notice that you're lost in thought, you're building the muscle of mindfulness. And you will fail a lot of times, hundreds of times, thousands of times. And if you meditate long enough, millions of times, your mind will wander. But bring it back. And then think about these things. Were you diligent? What are the emotions? What causes these? And your attitude while you're meditating is free from desire and discontent. And a really good test of this, can you do that, is when your mind wanders and you pick it up and you use, and what is very hard to stop doing is, what I tried to focus, what happened? What went wrong? Why can't I do this? I'm no good. And that's not being free from desire and discontent. And the benefit is, if we can do all these things, we will be free from desire and discontent while we're meditating and when we're off the pillow. And let me go ahead and lead you in a guided meditation. And by the way, I say the path is the way. When we're meditating, we're practicing being free from desire and discontent. And why are we practicing this? So when we're not meditating, we will be free from desire and discontent. So the path is the way, to sit there for extended periods of time, being able to not be triggered and free from desire and discontent is a sense of well-being, not dependent upon whatever the conditions or circumstances are. Okay. Find a position you feel comfortable. For me, it's helpful to have my foot on the ground, feet on the ground, eyes gently closed. It also can be helpful to have your back up straight. Now breathe into the count of 3. Breathe out to the count of 3. And increase the count slowly and begin to breathe deeper. But slowly increase the count. Slowly breathe deeper and deeper. But don't go beyond 10, or don't strain yourself when you're breathing. And now, if you'd like, as you breathe, find a place in your body where you feel the breath most vividly. Focus all your attention on it and get a felt sense of the breath. Continue to count. Continue to breathe long, slow, and deep. And if you feel it's too difficult to do both, counting and the felt sense, drop the counting. And now, if you are counting, stop the counting and just breathe naturally. And still maintain a felt sense of the breath. What we have done up to this point is a skillful way to reduce tension in your body, to relax you, to trigger the relaxation response, decrease your heart rate. And it can bring about a sense of well-being. And if you're ever in a stressful situation, before or after that stressful situation, this can be really helpful, really palliative. The long, slow, deep breaths with counting and the felt sense of the breath. Now, this phase is a little bit more difficult and takes more focus. But if you can, be aware when you're breathing in, be aware when you're breathing out. Breathe naturally and have that felt sense of the breath wherever you feel it most vividly. For some people, it's in the nostrils, for some in the chest, some in the navel. Eventually, there'll be a wave of experience. When it happens, just bring your focus back to your breath. And note that feeling when you finally became aware of your thought or emotion. That's mindfulness. It's a feeling like you've woken up from a dream, and you have. You're just lost in thought. Mindfulness is your friend, brings you back. The present moment awareness. Are you being diligent and ardent? Are you really trying to pay attention to your nostrils, to your breathing? Do you really know when you're breathing in and really know when you're breathing out? Notice when you are diligent, is the felt sense more vivid? Be curious. Notice when the sensations are vivid, when they're not vivid, and how it changes over time. Do you lose focus on the in breath or the out breath? Be diligent, pay attention, see if you can notice. Next time your mind wanders, notice if you're free from desire or discontent, or are you disappointed in yourself for allowing your mind to wander? Unconditional compassion and love for yourself. Be curious. Does more air go in through your left nostril or your right nostril? Where do you feel it more vividly? May you be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to you. May you always meet with spiritual success. May you also have the patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome the inevitable problems, difficulties, and failures in life. May you rise above them with morality, integrity, forgiveness, compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom. Smile and keep repeating to yourself, thank you, thank you, thank you.